The meeting room aboard Haven Point Station was cold and sterile. Jake Morrison sat across from beings that barely looked real. The Kefir delegation had arrived an hour ago, and Jake was still trying to process what he was seeing. Ambassador. Zethkal was tall, almost 7 feet, with skin that looked like polished crystal. His face was perfectly symmetrical, with large eyes that showed no emotion at all. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, beautiful but somehow empty. "We greet you, Captain Morrison," Zethkal said. "We have come to offer assistance to your species." Beside the ambassador sat Mirlin, who had been introduced as their chief scientific advisor. She was smaller than Zethkal, but equally crystalline, with silver hair that seemed to float around her head. Her eyes were completely black, reflecting light like mirrors. On the human side, Jake was joined by Emma Clark, Earth's top diplomat, and Dr. Kevin Wright, a scientist who specialized in alien contact protocols. Emma had been nervous during the shuttle ride over, but now she sat perfectly still, watching the aliens with professional calm. "Thank you for meeting with us," Emma said carefully. "We're interested in learning more about your species and your intentions." Mirlin tilted her head slightly. "Your gratitude response is noted. It appears to be a mild form of the emotional contamination we have observed in your species." Jake felt his jaw tighten. "Contamination?" "Yes," Zethkal replied. "Your species displays consistent patterns of irrational behavior. You make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. You waste energy on activities that serve no practical purpose. You form attachments to other individuals that cloud your judgment." "Doctor," Wright leaned forward. "Those aren't contaminations. They're part of what makes us human." "Precisely," Mirlin said. "Your species has evolved in a way that prioritizes emotional response over optimal function. This has resulted in widespread cognitive dysfunction." Emma kept her voice steady. "Can you explain what you mean by cognitive dysfunction?" Zethkal gestured, and a holographic display appeared above the table. It showed images of humans in various situations, laughing, crying, embracing, arguing. "Observe," the ambassador said. "This human releases water from its eyes when observing fictional events on a screen. The logical response would be to recognize that the events are not real and therefore require no response at all. The image changed to show a human couple holding hands. These two humans engage in unnecessary physical contact that serves no reproductive purpose. They claim to experience love, which our analysis indicates is a chemical imbalance in the brain." Jake watched the images with growing anger. These aliens were reducing everything beautiful about humanity to cold clinical observations. Love isn't a chemical imbalance. It's what makes life worth living. "Another symptom," Mirlin noted. "You assign arbitrary value to existence based on emotional satisfaction rather than practical achievement." The hologram shifted to show human children playing. Young humans waste considerable energy on activities with no survival benefit. They play instead of focusing on skill development. Adult humans encourage this behavior, further spreading the dysfunction. Emma took a deep breath. "What you call dysfunction, we call being human. Our emotions, our capacity for joy and sorrow, our ability to form bonds with each other. These aren't weaknesses. They're our greatest strengths." "Incorrect," Zethkal said. "We have observed your species' history. Your emotions have caused wars, prevented rational decision-making, and created unnecessary suffering. A logical species would have avoided these problems entirely." Dr. Wright spoke up. "But our emotions have also driven us to create art, music, literature. They've motivated us to explore space, to help strangers, to sacrifice for our children. Without emotions, we would never have developed as a species." Mirlin's black eyes reflected the room's lights. "Your creative output is another symptom of the dysfunction. You create things that serve no practical purpose simply because they generate positive emotional responses. This is inefficient resource allocation. It's what makes us alive," Jake said quietly. You are biologically alive, Zethkal replied. But you are not functionally optimal. This is why we have come to offer treatment. Emma leaned back in her chair. Treatment? The hologram changed again, showing images of pristine white buildings and gleaming laboratories. We have prepared facilities where your species can be properly cured. Our medical technology can restructure your neural pathways to eliminate emotional responses. You will think clearly, make rational decisions, and achieve optimal function. Jake felt sick. You want to remove our emotions? We want to heal you, Merlin said. Your emotional capacity causes you pain, does it not? You experience sadness, fear, anger, loneliness. These are forms of suffering that serve no purpose. We can eliminate this suffering permanently. But we'd also lose happiness, love, wonder, excitement, Dr. Wright protested. You'd be taking away everything that makes life meaningful. Meaning is an emotional construct, Zethkal explained. It has no objective reality. Once cured, you will no longer require meaning to function effectively. Emma looked at the images of the alien facilities. They were beautiful in a cold, perfect way, but they felt completely lifeless. What is your society like, Ambassador? How do your people live? Optimally, Zethkal replied. We have no crime, no conflict, no waste. Every individual performs their assigned function with maximum efficiency. We have eliminated poverty, inequality, and suffering. What about art? Music? Stories? We have no need for such things. Our entertainment consists of mathematical equations and logical puzzles. We find efficiency aesthetically pleasing. Jake tried to imagine a life without music, without laughter, without the warmth of friendship. It sounded like death to him. And love? Do any of your people experience love? Both aliens paused, as if the question confused them. Love is the emotional attachment between individuals, Merlin said finally. It serves no function once reproduction is complete. We have eliminated it, along with all other disruptive emotions. How do you reproduce? Dr. Wright asked. Through optimal genetic selection and artificial gestation. Emotional attachment between parents and offspring is unnecessary once the young reach functional maturity. Emma felt a chill. So you don't have families? No bonds between parents and children? We have genetic contributors and offspring. Emotional bonds would interfere with objective assessment of individual performance. Jake thought about his own family, his sister who had written him just that morning, his parents who had hugged him goodbye when he left for this mission. The idea of losing those connections was horrifying. How long would this treatment take? Emma asked. Approximately 30 days for complete neural restructuring, Zethkal replied. We have prepared facilities for your entire species. The process is irreversible, but completely painless. And if we refuse? The two aliens exchanged a look that might have been confusion. Refusal would be irrational, Merlin said. You would be choosing to remain diseased when a cure is available. Jake stood up. We need time to consider your offer. Of course. We understand that emotional beings require time to process information irrationally. We will remain in this system for 7 days to await your decision. As the meeting ended and the aliens departed, Jake sat in stunned silence with Emma and Dr. Wright. The Kefir had offered to cure humanity of what they saw as a terrible disease. But their cure would destroy everything that made humans human. They don't understand, Emma said quietly. They think they're being kind. They're offering to make us like them, Dr. Wright replied. Logical, efficient, and completely empty. Jake looked out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there? The Kefir waited for humanity's answer. They had offered to end human suffering by ending human feeling itself. The question was whether humanity would be willing to trade its heart for peace. The silence in the lab felt heavy. Alex stared at the man who claimed to be Ben Parker. He looked exactly the same. Same height, same build, same brown hair cut short. But his eyes were different. They held a depth that hadn't been there before, like looking into a deep well at night. "What do you mean? What Ben Parker became?" Lisa asked. She took a step closer to the platform, but stopped when the man turned to look at her. His gaze seemed to see right through her. "Time is not a river flowing in one direction," the man said. "It is an ocean with currents that flow in all directions. Ben Parker entered that ocean 3 days ago. He traveled much further than you." "Intended." Jake frowned and checked his instruments. "That's impossible." The temporal displacement was set for exactly 72 hours. The quantum field was programmed to carry you forward 3 days and stop. The man smiled, but it wasn't. Ben's smile. It was too knowing, too calm. "Your machine worked perfectly, but time itself had other plans. The quantum field you created opened a doorway." Ben Parker stepped through that doorway and kept walking. Karen pulled up her calculations on her tablet. "The equations don't support that. The temporal bubble should have collapsed after exactly 72 hours. You should have been deposited in the future and stayed there until we opened the return portal. Your equations are correct for normal space and time," the man said. But Ben Parker did not experience normal time. He experienced time as it truly is: flexible, changeable, alive. Ryan looked at his screens. The quantum signature matches. The DNA scan confirms it. This is Ben Parker. But something's wrong with the neural readings. The brain activity patterns are completely different. Alex felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. What happened to Ben? Where did he go? The man walked to the nearest computer terminal. He didn't ask permission. He simply placed his hand on a keyboard and began typing. His fingers moved faster than any human could type. Numbers and symbols filled the screen at an incredible speed. Ben Parker traveled forward through time, the man said while he typed. But he didn't stop at 3 days. He kept going. Years, decades, centuries. He saw the rise and fall of civilizations. He witnessed the birth and death of stars. He learned things that no human was meant to know. Lisa watched the symbols flowing across the screen. "What are you?" "Typing? The mathematical proof of what I'm telling you," the man replied. Ben Parker's consciousness was caught in a temporal loop. He experienced thousands of years in what felt like moments. During that time, he encountered others, beings that exist outside normal time and space. The typing stopped. The man turned to face the team. Ben Parker was chosen. His mind was expanded. His consciousness was merged with something greater. He became the first human to transcend the limitations of linear time. Alex felt dizzy. That's impossible. Humans can't survive that kind of temporal displacement. The psychological trauma alone would drive anyone insane. Normal humans, yes, the man agreed. But Ben Parker was not alone during his journey. He was guided, protected, taught. The beings he encountered exist in a state beyond human understanding. They have been waiting for humanity to develop time travel. They knew this moment would come. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead. "What beings? What are you talking about?" The man looked at each member of the team. "They are what humanity will become. 50,000 years in the future, humans will evolve. Beyond physical form, they will become beings of pure energy and consciousness. They exist outside of time, able to see the past and future as clearly as the present." Karen shook her head. "Evolution doesn't work that way. Humans can't just become energy beings. It violates everything we know about biology and physics. Your current understanding is limited," the man said. "In the future, humans will discover that consciousness is not produced by the brain. It is something far more fundamental, something that exists independently of matter and energy." Ryan ran another DNA scan. The physical body is definitely Ben Parker, but the neural patterns show activity in brain regions that shouldn't be active, areas that are normally dormant in humans. Alex took a deep breath. "Let's say you're telling the truth. Let's say Ben somehow traveled thousands of years into the future and met these evolved humans. Why did you come back? Why now? The man's expression became serious. Because humanity is about to face its greatest challenge. In 2 years, first contact with an alien species will occur. These aliens are not peaceful explorers. They are conquerors. They have destroyed 12 star systems and countless civilizations. Lisa felt her heart rate increase. Aliens? Are you saying there are hostile aliens coming to Earth? The Vorthic Empire, the man said. They view young civilizations as threats to be eliminated. They have been watching Earth for decades. When they detect that humans have developed time travel, they will act. They will come to destroy humanity before it can become a threat to them. Jake laughed nervously. This is insane. We're talking about time travel and aliens and evolved humans. It sounds like bad science fiction. The man walked to another computer terminal. Again, his fingers moved with impossible speed. In 47 minutes, a solar flare will occur. It will disrupt satellite communications for 6 hours. The flare will originate from a sunspot group that is currently invisible to Earth-based telescopes. That's impossible, Corinne said. Solar flares can't be predicted that precisely. Check your instruments in 47 minutes, the man replied. When the flare occurs exactly as I predicted, you will begin to believe that what I'm telling you is true. Alex felt like his world was spinning out of control. Even if aliens are coming, what can we do? We're just a small research team. We can't fight an interstellar empire. You cannot fight them with conventional weapons, the man agreed. The Vorthic have technology that is thousands of years ahead of current human capabilities. Their ships are massive. Their weapons can destroy entire cities. Their shields can withstand nuclear attacks. So we're doomed, Lisa said quietly. The man shook his head. No, humanity has something the Vorthic lack. Something that makes humans unique in the galaxy. The ability to adapt and innovate under extreme pressure. The capacity for rapid technological advancement when facing extinction. Ryan looked confused. What good is that against superior alien technology? The Vorthic are an ancient species. The man explained. They have been using the same technology for thousands of years. They follow rigid patterns. They cannot think creatively. They cannot adapt to new situations. Humans can. Alex felt a spark of hope. So we can beat them? With the right preparation, yes, the man said. But you must begin immediately. The knowledge Ben Parker gained during his journey through time must be shared. Human technology must advance rapidly. The planet must be united and prepare for war. Corinne looked at her equations again. How do we know any of this is true? How do? We know you're not just someone who's having a psychotic break. The man smiled sadly. Because in 46 minutes, the solar flare will occur. And when it does, you will realize that everything I've told you is the truth. Ben Parker's consciousness still exists within this body. He remembers his life, his family, his friends. But he also remembers 50,000 years of human history that hasn't happened yet. The team stood in stunned silence. The implications were staggering. If the man was telling the truth, everything they thought they knew about reality was wrong. Time travel was just the beginning. Humanity was about to face an alien invasion, and their only hope was to prepare for a war they couldn't imagine. Alex looked at the clock on the wall. 45 minutes until they would know if their world had just changed forever. 45 minutes until they learned whether the time machine had brought back their friend or something far stranger and more dangerous. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but Dr. Alex Martinez barely noticed. His eyes were fixed on the readings that danced across the blue screens in front of him. The numbers looked perfect. Too perfect. After 15 years of failed experiments and broken theories, he was afraid to believe what he was seeing. Alex, you need to look at this. Dr. Lisa Adams called from across the lab. Her voice carried the same mix of excitement and fear that had been hanging in the air for weeks. She stood next to a machine that looked like something from a science fiction movie. Metal rings surrounded a platform in the center, and cables ran everywhere like electronic veins. The Nevada Research Institute had been their home for the past 5 years. The underground facility was hidden in the desert, far from curious eyes. The government had given them unlimited funding and one simple order: make time travel work. Everyone said it was impossible. Everyone except Alex and his team. Jake Sullivan wiped grease from his hands and stepped away from the machine. The engineer had been working on the temporal displacement unit for 3 days straight. His red hair was messy, and his clothes were stained with oil and coffee. "The containment field is stable," he said. "All the safety systems are online. The power core is running at optimal levels." Dr. Corinne Walsh looked up from her tablet. The physicist had been running calculations all morning. Her desk was covered with papers filled with equations that would make most people's heads spin. "The quantum field equations check out," she said. "The temporal coordinates are locked in. We're looking at a 72-hour displacement." Ryan Brooks sat at the main control station. The technician's fingers moved over the keyboard like a pianist playing a complex song. Multiple screens showed different aspects of the machine's operation. Green lights indicated that every system was ready. "All systems are go," he said. "We're ready for the tests." Alex walked to the center of the room where their volunteer waited. Captain Ben Parker had been their choice for the first human test. The former military officer was 42 years old, in perfect physical condition, and had passed every psychological evaluation. His brown hair was cut short, and his blue eyes showed no fear. He had volunteered for dangerous missions before, but nothing like this. "You understand what we're asking you to do," Alex said. It wasn't a question. They had gone over the procedure dozens of times. Ben would step into the machine, and the team would activate the temporal displacement field. The machine would send him 72 hours into the future. Then they would open a return portal and bring him back to the present. "I understand, Doc," Ben replied. His voice was calm and steady. "I go forward 3 days, then you pull me back." "Simple as that." Lisa shook her head. "It's not simple at all. We're breaking the laws of physics. We're sending a human being through time. The energy requirements alone should be impossible." "But it's not impossible," Alex said. "We've done it with lab mice. We've done it with larger animals. The process works. The biological scans show no damage. The subjects return exactly as they left." Corinne held up her tablet. "The temporal mathematics are sound. The quantum field creates a bubble around the subject. Time moves differently inside the bubble. What feels like seconds to the subject will actually be hours in normal time." Jake checked the machine one more time. "The containment field will protect Ben from the temporal energies. The return portal will lock onto his quantum signature and bring him back to this exact moment and location." Ryan looked at his screens. "Power levels are stable. The quantum field generators are operating within normal parameters. The temporal anchor is locked onto the present moment." Alex took a deep breath. "Then, are you ready?" The captain nodded and stepped onto the platform. In the center of the machine, the metal rings around him began to glow with a soft blue light. The air itself seemed to shimmer and dance. "See you in 3 days, Doc," Ben said with a smile. Alex moved to the main control panel. His hand hovered over the activation switch. 15 years of work had led to this moment. Success would change everything. Failure could destroy them all. "Beginning temporal displacement in 5 seconds," he announced. The machine hummed to life. The blue glow grew brighter. The rings spun faster and faster until they became a blur. Ben stood calmly in the center, his body outlined by dancing energy. The air crackled with electricity. "Temporal field at maximum strength," Ryan called out. "Quantum signature locked. Displacement coordinates confirmed. Activating portal," Alex said. He pushed the switch. The world exploded into light and sound. The rings spun so fast they disappeared. The platform glowed like a small sun. Ben's form became unclear, like looking at someone through water. Then in a flash of brilliant white light, he was gone. The machine powered down. The rings slowed to a stop. The platform was empty. The only sound was the hum of the cooling systems. Did it work? Lisa asked. Alex checked his instruments. Temporal. Displacement successful. Ben has been moved 72 hours into the future. His quantum signature is stable. All systems are functioning normally. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead. The containment field held. No energy leaks. No system failures. Everything worked exactly as planned. Corinne looked at her equations one more time. The mathematics were correct. The temporal bubble should have formed around Ben and carried him forward through time. In 3 days, we'll be able to bring him back. Ryan saved all the data from the tests. I'm recording everything. Power consumption, field strength, quantum readings. We'll need this information for the return procedure. The team spent the next 3 days checking and rechecking their work. They ran simulations of the return portal. They calculated the exact moment when Ben would arrive in the future. They prepared for every possible problem. On the 3rd day, Alex stood at the control panel again. Beginning return sequence, he announced. Opening temporal portal in 5 seconds. The machine powered up again. The rings began to spin. The platform glowed as the same blue light. But this time, instead of sending someone away, they were bringing someone back. Portal opening, Ryan called out. Quantum signature detected. Something's coming through. The light grew brighter. The air shimmered and danced. A figure began to form on the platform. It was human-shaped but unclear, like a photograph that was out of focus. Is that Ben? Lisa asked. The figure became more solid. It was definitely a person, male, the right height and build. Wearing the same clothes Ben had worn 3 days ago. Closing portal, Alex said. Shutting down temporal field. The machine powered down. The rings stopped spinning. The light faded. A man stood on the platform, solid and real. He looked exactly like Ben Parker. Same face, same hair, same build. But something was different. The man stepped off the platform. He looked at each member of the team with eyes that seemed to see everything. When he spoke, his voice was Ben's voice, but the words were strange. The experiment was successful, he said. But the journey was longer than you know. Much longer. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. Ben, are you all right? The man who looked like Ben smiled. It was not quite the same smile Ben had worn 3 days ago. I am what Ben Parker became, he said, and I returned to prepare you for what is coming. The time machine had worked perfectly, but what came back wasn't entirely human anymore. Nancy Morrison had always been good at finding things out. When Jake was a teenager and tried to hide bad grades from her, she found them. When Amy claimed she was studying late but was really out with friends, Nancy knew. And now, watching her, some being slowly destroyed by these so-called trials, she knew something was very wrong. She walked through the crystal halls of the Valyrian Palace, looking for answers. Most of the doors were sealed to guests, but Nancy had learned a few things during her years as an engineer. Crystal technology was beautiful, but it still followed basic rules of physics. She found what she was looking for in a maintenance area behind the ceremonial hall. Through a thin crystal wall, she could hear voices speaking in the Valyrian language. Nancy did not understand the words, but she recognized one voice immediately. It was Velandra. Using a small device from her toolkit, Nancy carefully created a tiny hole in the crystal wall. The material was strong but brittle, and with the right pressure in the right place, it cracked silently. She pressed her ear to the hole and listened. Lisa Park had taught the human delegation some basic Valyrian phrases, and Nancy had been paying attention. She caught enough words to understand what was being discussed. The word for human came up often, along with words that meant failure and unworthy. But the most important word she heard was plan. Valandra was not just testing Jake. She was following a plan to make him fail. Nancy pulled back from the wall, her heart racing. She had suspected this, but hearing it confirmed made her blood boil. No one was going to destroy her son if she had anything to say about it. She hurried back to the guest quarters, where she found Frank and Amy waiting for her. "Where have you been?" Frank asked. "You look upset." "I am upset," Nancy said, closing the door behind her. "Sit down. We need to talk." Frank and Amy sat on the crystal furniture while Nancy paced back and forth. "The trials are rigged," she said bluntly. "Valandra is deliberately making Jake fail." "What do you mean?" Amy asked. "I mean, she never intended to accept him into her family. She's using these trials to humiliate him and prove that humans are inferior." Frank's face darkened. "That witch." "I knew something was off about her." "But why?" Amy asked. "If she didn't want Jake to marry Zara, why not just say no from the beginning?" Nancy had been thinking about this. "Because she's smart. If she just refused, she would look like the bad guy. But if Jake fails the trials, she can say he wasn't worthy. It makes the humans look bad, not her." "So what do we do?" Frank asked. "We can't just sit here and watch Jake get torn apart." "We fight back," Nancy said firmly. "But we need proof." Meanwhile, in another part of the palace, Ben was having his own suspicions. As a doctor, he was trained to notice things that others miss. And what he had noticed was that the Valyrian elders were not surprised when Jake failed their tests. They acted like they had expected it. Ben found Lisa in the library, studying Valyrian law books. "Lisa, I need to ask you something. Is it normal for trial candidates to fail this many tests?" Lisa looked up from her tablet. "Actually, no. I've been researching traditional Valyrian trials, and most candidates pass at least half of them. The trials are supposed to be challenging but fair. And Jake is failing almost everything." "Which doesn't make sense," Lisa said. "I've seen Jake under pressure before. He's smart and adaptable. He should be doing better than this." Ben sat down across from her. "What if the trials aren't fair?" Lisa was quiet for a moment. "You think they're cheating?" "I think they never intended for Jake to succeed." Lisa turned back to her tablet and started typing rapidly. "If that's true, then they're violating their own laws. Valyrian marriage trials are supposed to be conducted with honor and fairness. Let me see what the legal texts say about this." After several minutes of reading, Lisa's face went pale. "Ben, listen to this. Any candidate who is subjected to unfair or impossible trials has the right to challenge the proceedings before the full council of matriarchs. And get this, if the trials are found to be corrupted, the family conducting them loses all authority over the marriage. So we can stop this? If we can prove it," Lisa said. "We need evidence that the trials were rigged." In his room, Jake sat on his crystal bed, staring at his hands. Tomorrow was the final day of trials, and he already knew he would fail. He had been failing everything for days now. Maybe Valandra was right. Maybe he was not worthy of Zara. A soft knock came at his door. "Come in," he called. Zara entered, but she looked different. Instead of her usual formal robes, she was wearing simple clothes. Her face showed more emotion than Jake had seen since he arrived on Valeria Prime. "Jake, we need to talk," she said, sitting beside him. "If this is about the trials, I already know I'm failing." "The trials are wrong," Zara said firmly. "I've been watching you for days, and I can see what they're doing to you. You're not yourself anymore." Jake looked at her in surprise. "But your mother said—" "My mother is wrong," Zara interrupted. "I don't care what she says. I don't care about the trials. I care about you. But if I fail tomorrow, we can't get married." Zara took his hands in hers. "Jake, do you remember when we first met? You were negotiating peace between our species. You were confident and strong and kind. You made jokes that made me laugh. You showed me that humans and Valyrians could understand each other." Jake nodded, remembering those days. It felt like a lifetime ago. That's the man I fell in love with, Zara continued. Not this broken person my mother is trying to create. I want to marry Jake Morrison, the human starship captain. Not some fake Valyrian copy. Jake felt something stir in his chest. It was like a tiny flame that had been almost extinguished but was starting to burn again. But your family, my family, will learn to accept you as you are, or they won't be my family anymore. Jake stared at her. You would do that? You would choose me over them? I already have, Zara said. I chose you the moment I said yes to your proposal. For the first time in days, Jake smiled a real smile. I love you. I love you too. But Jake, I need you to be yourself again. The real you, not this shadow that my mother has created. Before Jake could respond, they heard voices in the hallway. The door burst open, and Valandra swept into the room with 2 guards behind her. Zarathil, she said coldly, you were not given permission to visit the human. I don't need permission. To speak with my fiancé, Zara said, standing up. You do when he is undergoing sacred trials, Valandra replied. Your presence here is inappropriate. Jake started to stand as well, but Valandra held up a hand. You will remain seated, human. You have not earned the right to stand in my presence. Something inside Jake snapped. The tiny flame that Zara had rekindled suddenly blazed into a fire. My name is Captain Jake Morrison, he said, standing up anyway, and I'll stand when I choose to stand. Valandra's eyes flashed with anger. You dare to defy me. I'm not defying you, Jake said calmly. I'm being myself. You know, that human you've been trying so hard to destroy. You are proving my point, Valandra said. Humans are crude and disrespectful. You have no understanding of proper behavior. Maybe not, Jake said. But I understand right from wrong. And what you've been doing to me is wrong. Valandra stepped closer to him. What I have been doing is testing you, and you have failed. No, Jake said. You've been trying to break me. But here's the thing about humans. We don't break as easily as you think. We shall see, Valandra said. Tomorrow you will face your final trial. When you fail that, you will leave this world forever. And my daughter will forget about this foolish infatuation. She turned to leave, then paused. And if you think your pathetic human family can help you, think again. They are guests here, and guests who cause trouble can be asked to leave at any time. After she left, Jake and Zara looked at each other. She's not going to give up, Zara said. Neither am I, Jake replied. And neither is my family. You haven't met my mother when she's angry. In another part of the palace, Nancy Morrison was proving Jake right. She had gathered Frank, Amy, Ben, and Lisa in a storage room where they could talk privately. Here's what we know, Nancy said. Valandra is rigging the trials to make Jake fail. She never intended to accept him into the family. And here's what we can do about it, Lisa added. According to Valyrian law, we can challenge the trials if we have proof they were unfair. How do we get proof? Frank asked. Nancy smiled grimly. Leave that to me. I've been watching how this place works, and I have some ideas. What kind of ideas? Amy asked. The kind that will show everyone what Valandra really is, Nancy said. She wants to play games with my son. Fine, but she's about to learn that human mothers don't play fair when their children are threatened. As the group made their plans, none of them noticed a small crystal device hidden in the corner of the room. Valandra had been listening. To every word. The matriarch smiled to herself. The humans thought they were clever, but they had no idea what they were up against. Tomorrow will be very interesting indeed. Jake stood in the center of a large crystal room, wearing white robes that felt strange against his skin. Around him, 5 Valyrian elders sat in a circle, their faces showing no emotion. This was the first of the formal trials that would determine if he was worthy to marry Zara. Captain Morrison, said Elder Kefir, an ancient Valyrian with skin like frosted glass. Today you will face the trial of mental discipline. You must meditate without moving for 4 hours. If you move, speak, or show any emotion, you will fail. 4 hours. Jake had tried Valyrian meditation before, but never for that long. Human minds were not built for such stillness. I understand, he said, bowing formally. Begin, Elder Kefir commanded. Jake closed his eyes and tried to empty his mind the way Falvin had taught him. But immediately, thoughts started racing through his head. He thought about Zara, about his family, about how strange this all felt. He tried to push the thoughts away, but more kept coming. After what felt like hours, his legs started to ache. The Valyrian meditation position was not comfortable for human bodies. Jake shifted slightly, trying to ease the pain. Movement, Elder Kefir announced. You have failed. Jake opened his eyes. He had been meditating for only 30 minutes. I request another chance, Jake said, trying to keep his voice calm. There are no second chances in Valyrian trials, Elder Kefir replied. We will record this failure and move to the next test. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. This was unfair. The trial was designed for Valyrian bodies and minds, not human ones. But he forced himself to stay calm. I understand, he said. The next trial was even worse. Jake had to recite complex Valyrian poetry from memory while performing intricate hand movements. The words were in an ancient dialect that he barely understood. Every time he made a mistake, the elders would mark it down on their crystal tablets. By the end of the day, Jake had failed 3 out of 5 trials. As he walked back to his room, his shoulders felt heavy with defeat. In the hallway, he passed Ben and Lisa, who were coming back from their own cultural lessons. How did it go? Ben asked, seeing Jake's face. Terrible, Jake said quietly. I failed most of the tests. Lisa frowned. That doesn't make sense. I've been studying these trials, and they're usually adapted for different species. They shouldn't be impossible for humans. Well, they are for me, Jake said. Maybe I'm just not smart enough. Don't say that, Ben said firmly. You're one of the smartest people I know. Something else is going on here. Jake wanted to believe his friend, but the evidence was clear. He was failing, and Zara's family was watching him fail. Tomorrow would bring more trials, and he was not sure he could face them in her private chambers. Valandra met with the elders who had tested Jake. The room was lit by crystal formations that cast dancing shadows on the walls. Report, she commanded. Elder Kefir bowed. The human performed as expected, matriarch. He failed the mental discipline trial, the poetry recitation, and the cultural knowledge examination. He barely passed the physical coordination test. Excellent, Valandra said. And tomorrow? Tomorrow we will test his emotional control and his willingness to submit to authority. I believe he will find these even more difficult. Valandra nodded. Good. Make sure the human delegation witnesses his failures. I want them to see that their species is not ready for integration with ours. Elder Kefir looked uncertain. Matriarch, may I ask why we are not giving the human a fair chance? Some of these trials could be adapted for his species. Valandra's eyes flashed with cold light. Because, Elder, this marriage must fail. If it succeeds, other humans will think they can. Join our families. They will bring their chaos and their primitive emotions into our ordered society. I will not allow that to happen. But what about Zarathil? She clearly loves the human. Zarathil is young and confused, Valandra said dismissively. When she sees how inferior her chosen mate is, she will come to her senses. Love is temporary. Family honor is forever. The next morning, Jake woke up feeling sick to his stomach. He had barely slept, and his body ached from the previous day's trials. When he looked in the mirror, he saw dark circles under his eyes and a face that looked older than his years. Zara came to bring him breakfast, but she looked worried. Jake, are you all right? You look terrible. I'm fine, Jake lied. Just tired. I heard about the trials yesterday, Zara said softly. I'm sorry they were so difficult. Jake sat down heavily on his crystal bed. Maybe your mother is right. Maybe I'm not good enough for your family. Zara sat beside him and took his hand. Don't say that. The trials are just customs. They don't measure who you really are. Then why do I feel like such a failure? Before Zara could answer, Thalvin appeared in the doorway. Captain Morrison, it is time for today's trials. Jake stood up slowly. His body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I'm ready, but he was not ready. The emotional control trial required him to remain calm while the elders insulted him and his species. They called humans primitive, violent, and unworthy. They said his people were like wild animals who had learned to use tools. Jake's hands clenched into fists. His face turned red with anger. He wanted to defend his people, to tell these arrogant aliens that humans had their own strengths and virtues. But he forced himself to stay silent. You are showing emotion, Elder Keffer observed. This is unacceptable in Valyrian society. I understand, Jake said through gritted teeth. Do you? Your face shows anger. Your body shows tension. Among our people, such displays are considered barbaric. Jake took a deep breath and tried to relax his muscles. But inside, his heart was pounding with rage. The authority trial was even worse. Jake had to kneel before the elders and accept their commands without question. They ordered him to clean the floor with his hands. They made him stand on one foot. For an hour, they commanded him to apologize for being human. With each humiliating task, Jake felt a piece of his dignity slip away. But he did what they asked, because he loved Zara and wanted to marry her. From the observation area, Nancy Morrison watched her son being humiliated. Her hands were clenched so tight that her knuckles were white. Beside her, Frank was grinding his teeth. This is wrong, Nancy whispered to Ben. This isn't a test. This is torture. I know, Ben said quietly. But Jake wants to go through with it. Look at him, Amy said, tears in her eyes. They're breaking him down piece by piece. Nancy watched as the elders made her son bow lower and lower, until his forehead was touching the crystal floor. This was not the confident, happy man she had raised. This was a broken stranger wearing her son's face. I can't watch anymore, Nancy said, standing up. Where are you going? Frank asked. To find out what's really going on here, Nancy said. Grimly, no mother should have to watch her child be destroyed like this. As Nancy left the observation area, Elder Keffer was finishing the day's trials. Captain Morrison, he announced, you have failed 4 out of 5 trials today. Your emotional control is poor. Your willingness to submit to authority is adequate, but reluctant. Jake remained on his knees, staring at the crystal floor. He felt empty inside, like something important had been carved out of his chest. Tomorrow is your final day of trials, Elder Keffer continued. If you fail tomorrow, the wedding will be canceled, and you will be asked to leave Valeria Prime. Immediately, Jake nodded without looking up. I understand. But as he walked back to his room, he wondered if he wanted to pass the trials anymore. The man who might succeed would not be Jake Morrison. It would be some hollow shell that looked like him but had no soul. Behind him, in the shadows of the Crystal Hall, Velendra smiled. Everything was going exactly according to plan. In the guest quarters, Nancy Morrison was making plans of her own. She had not raised her son to be a quitter, and she had not come all this way to watch him be destroyed. If the Valyrians wanted to play games, they were about to learn that human mothers were not to be underestimated. The real test was about to begin.